Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. I am Phil. We're sailing the seas of Raid Shadow Legends. Happy Monday. It is good to be here with you all today. Now, over the weekend, it came to my attention that some of you may not know how to build champions in the most optimal way, and I thought that it might be good to go over and review a few tips all the way down to relics, to masteries, all that kind of stuff in order to help you build your champions correctly, build your champions most effectively. Now, the number one stat in the game is speed. So your stats are over here. I think over here on the bottom right-hand corner. You can see all your stats. And SPD, that's your speed, which is how often your champion takes a turn. The more turns you take, the more damage, the more effective they are, basically. So the most important stat is speed. If you're having trouble, one of the first things you can do is speed up your champions to see if that fixes the problem. You want to know a secret? You can get Corrado for free, as well as Fane, Ugo, and Vergus right now. Here's exactly how to do it. Log out of Plarium Play and uninstall. Use the link in the description below to start a brand new Raid Shadow Legends account. Log in, complete the tutorial, and you'll find Corrado Fox Hunter in your inbox afterwards. As you level up, you'll also get Fane, Ugo, and Vergus. So don't wait. Use that link and start a brand new account right now. But outside of speed, there are some other things that you want to look for. So the first kind of thing you want to do is determine what kind of champion you have. We could do Calamitous. Let's not do a mythical. We can go over a couple different kinds of champions here. Should we take Philia? Sure, Philia is an example. We have to determine what kind of champion Philia is in order to know how to build her outside of, just making her fast. So first thing you want to do is read her kit. So her A1, double hit, destroy max HP by damage inflicted, and cannot destroy a single enemy's max HP by more than 50%. A2, single target ability with a 100% chance of fully depleting the turn meter. A3 is an AoE that boosts her turn meter and heals her by 15% of the damage inflicted if the attack is critical. Then her passive self buffs with increased attack and increased crit damage. So since she's doing a lot of stuff based on damage inflicted, and since she's giving herself offensive buffs, you know that this champion is probably meant to be a damage dealer. Alright, so there are a couple ways that you can know if your champion's meant to deal damage. One is you can check the multipliers on hellhades.com. You can read their kit to see if they are doing mostly offensive work, or you can see if they ignore any amount of defense in their kit. And if they do any of those things, if they either have good multipliers, they do something based on their damage, like Philia here, or they ignore defense, or they buff themselves offensively, you know your champion is probably a damage dealer. Alright, so now that we've determined our kind of champion that we have, we want to figure out what kind of gear is best. So damage dealers are looking for sets and stats and pieces of gear that allow them to do the most damage possible. Alright, so let's see. What kind of sets or what kind of, well, first of all, let's talk about what kind of stats we want on our gear. It's worth noting that your top three pieces, your weapon has to be attack, your helmet has to be HP, and your shield has to be defense. There aren't really any other options here. But for your damage dealers, you have a couple options when it comes to the bottom pieces. Your gloves need to be either crit damage or crit rate. Now, crit rate is how often your champion crits. As you can see, if we open Philia's stats, she has a 101% chance to crit. How often does your champ crit? If they crit, they will apply critical damage to their multiplier. So you will see that Philia here has 203% critical damage. So you can use crit damage gloves to up that crit damage amount, which means that as they crit, they'll do more damage. Or if you don't have enough crit rate in your substats, you can use crit rate gloves in order to up that chance to crit. It is worth noting crit rate is better than crit damage. Generally speaking, you do not want to sacrifice crit rate for crit damage because then your champion will be useless. Crit damage does you no good if you're not critting. So if you can't reach 100% crit rate in your substats, you need to be using crit rate gloves. But we reached 100% crit rate in our substats, so we are free to use these nice crit damage gloves on our Philia. Next, we have to go back to the kit. We have to determine how this champion's damage scales. So in every skill, it says damage based on at the end of the skill. For Philia, it's damage based on attack on all 3 of her skills, which means we're going to be wanting to look at her attack stat as well. Since our gloves are going to be dedicated to critical damage in some sense, whether it's crit rate or make sure you get the hardest possible hit, your chest plate has only a couple options. If you actually open your filter, you can see what options you have for chest plate, and it can be either any of the flat stats, or it can be accuracy, resistance, or it can be HP, attack, or defense percentage. When you're going with a damage dealer, you always want the percentage version. So for Philia here, since her damage is based on attack, we have an attack percentage chest plate on her. We'll get into the sets that we use a little bit later on. But attack percentage, boosting her attack by 50% of her base attack. There you go. All good. She's going to be doing a lot more damage. And as for boots, you have 2 options with boots. The way I like to do my boots is I always go with speed boots. So here we have speed boots that are giving us 45 speed. The other option is you can go with attack percentage boots, or whatever stat your damage dealer bases their damage off of. You can go with that too, but you're going to lose the chance at getting 40 to 45 speed, depending on if you're using 5 or 6 star speed boots. So I personally like to use speed boots on all my champions. Philia here is coming in at 216 speed, which is a serviceable speed for most content, generally speaking. Serviceable, not good, but serviceable. So I don't like to sacrifice that kind of speed. So if you're building a damage dealer, crit rate or crit damage on the gloves, their damage stat on the chest plate, and preferably speed on the boots, but you can also do their damage stat on the boost if you want them to hit that much harder. Now, let's talk about sets. Again, if we are building a damage dealer, we have to keep a couple different things in mind. One is you are primarily looking for something and sets that are going to allow you to do more damage. There are a couple different ways you can do this. One is with like cruel gear. So cruel gear gives you a 15% attack boost and ignore 5% of enemy defense. So stat boosts are definitely an option here. So this crit rate set that you get from farming Ice Golem is a great option. The crit damage set that you get from farming Fire Knight is a great option just to boost your crit rate and crit damage stats. You can also do an offense set. I kind of don't like that set. I think it's kind of bad. Cruel gear is just the step up from that, and it's a lot better. It's actually usable gear, but I think cruel is the next best thing. In addition, you can put your nuking champions into ignore defense gear. Ignore defense gear sets are savage, instinct, lethal. The best one is going to be your lethal gear, because lethal gear actually gives you 10% extra crit rate as well in the set. But both savage and lethal are going to let you ignore 25% of enemy defense, and instinct is going to let you ignore 20% of enemy defense. I don't think I have any instinct gear on my account right now, but you know, just stack that with your cruel gear and you can ignore 30% of enemy defense, and then throw on Helm Smasher for your mastery for an additional 50% chance to ignore another 25% defense. If you don't know, defense is a stat that mitigates damage, so the more defense a champion has, the less damage they will take. If you're ignoring defense, you're going to be able to do more damage. That's how you want to build a damage dealer. Now, if we take someone like Frolny here, Frolny is a champion whose damage is based on HP. He's a damage dealing champion. He has the multipliers. He has the clues in his kit. His passive increases his crit damage for every 1000 HP he has. His A1 ignores defense. His A2 gets a boost if the attack is critical. His A3 gets a boost if his HP is higher than everybody else's on the opposing team. Frolny is a damage dealer, but he's HP based. So you're just going to want to use a HP based chest plate on your Frolny. Same thing goes with your accessories, by the way. Your ring should be whatever stat, for a damage dealer anyway, should be whatever stat that your damage dealer scales off of, as well as your banner, if you can, and then as well as your amulet being crit damage. Now, one thing that you should keep in mind is for champions like Ninja, champions like Thor, who else do we have who places debuffs? damage dealers that are supposed to place debuffs. You want to build some accuracy in their kit. Prime example of this would be Newt, right? So Newt just cares about crit damage for the most part because of his Blessed Bash. He cares about defense because he scales off of defense, and he needs accuracy. So you can run a accuracy banner on your, damage dealers that place debuffs if you want the debuffs that they place. Not required, but generally speaking, you want to do that because of things like the Nature's Wrath Blessing, which boosts overall damage every time they place a debuff. So you can get this blessing to make your damage dealers do any number of more damage, like crazy amount of extra damage here. And then of course the Irethi Coronet, which is just a souped up version of the blessing, is absolutely awesome. So that's how you build your damage dealers. You just want whatever stat that they scale off of on your chest plate, ring, and banner. There you go. Now it's worth noting you can't have a crit rate amulet, so you can always do a crit damage amulet as long as you have one for the faction. Now let's talk about supports. So a lot of champions are support type champions, like Mad Hatter here, all right? Like your Arbiter, your Lydia, and your Vizix. Now, Vizix says defense here. It's worth noting that this little title under the rarity of the champion isn't always a good referral as to if they're a damage dealer or not. Vizix does scale off of defense, but she's not really a damage dealer. Also, a lot of champs like Venomage, so Venomage is an epic champ, can both be supports and damage dealers. It just depends on how you want to build them. So you've got options, which is why it's always worth it to check the multipliers, right? It basically, if they're placing buffs or debuffs, they're probably not a damage dealer, and especially if that seems to be the primary focus of their kit. Although, champs like Venomage certainly can do that, right? So a champion like Lady Kimi, who is labeled as a support, she places a lot of buffs, a lot of debuffs. She has a lot of control in her kit. Someone like Gerda Bog Brew here places a lot of debuffs, has some turn meter control, all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to find, let's see, champion who's a support, who's not necessarily labeled as a support other than Vizix. Let's see, you could do, I feel like Calamitous is a super solid support, but he's also a super solid attack-based champion. Contra the Cyclone can actually do some damage, and she's a defense-based champion, but basically, she's also focused on debuffing. So you want to, for your debuffers, for your buffers, your debuffers, controllers, your crowd control, all that kind of stuff, you want two things. One, if they place any debuffs, you're going to want to boost your accuracy stat. So 350 accuracy is enough accuracy for the vast majority of PvE content. So you're going to, depending on where you are in the game, you're going to want at least 350 accuracy on all your champions. If you're just farming level 20 dungeons, 200 accuracy is enough. Basically, the rule is you want 10 accuracy for every dungeon stage you're on. For that reason, I highly recommend keeping accuracy gear early on, especially before you get perception gear, especially if it really rolls speed well. So like we have a double speed roll here on an accuracy shield. Not sure if you guys can see that, but I highly recommend keeping accuracy gear. It can help you meet that threshold, especially if you don't have access to a bunch of perception gear yet. And then you're going to want speed. So the more speed that your debuffers have or your buffers have, the more consistently they can keep up their buffs and their debuffs. For these days, I like to aim around 300 speed for my support champions, no matter if they're for PvE or PvP. We've got Mad Hatter here at 300 speed. Lydia is a lot slower than I'd like at 289 speed. Vizix is definitely slow at 251 speed, but I really like to have most of my supports here, like Queen of Hearts, 299 speed, just shy of 300. Armon's the Magnificent, a great support for Arena, coming in at 300 speed. And Prince Kaimar, I think I swapped a lot of gear around building Newt. But Lady Kimi is my third fastest champion at 340 speed. And my Grand Oak Padrake is my second fastest champion at 350 speed. Then, of course, my Arbiter is the fastest champion on my account, coming in at 382 speed. So, again, depending on what you want them to do, speed and accuracy, most of your focus is going to go into speed. What I like to do these days is build for speed and then try to cover any accuracy. I get you can't always do that depending on where you are on your account, but I can with the gear I have. I like to build for speed first, then get accuracy in my substats or my sets. And again, for support champions, it really doesn't matter what your pieces are. I like to use a accuracy banner on them. So accuracy banner just lets you get a little more accuracy. Speed boots are a must on support type champions, and then HP and defense just to make them a little bit more tanky. Oh, you know what? This is actually a good piece. It's gear enhancement. Good piece to roll that up. Yeah, Mithril gonna be super tanky now. But I like to do either HP or defense on all my supports if I can, just so that we can make them a little bit tanky and we don't have to worry about healing them. Our damage dealers are already going to be squishy enough because they neglect the HP and defense stats in favor of, attack, speed, crit rate, crit damage, and or accuracy most of the time. So they're already going to be squishy enough. Our supports, at least some of them, are there to keep us alive. So I'd really rather not die for the most part. That's a better ring. I'd really rather not die for the most part to Hydra or whatever else. Of course, a triple rolled attack. So I like to add on a little bit of HP and defense for them. But again, the speed boots are a must. You can't change the fact that weapons have to be attack. So there we go. How's our Mithril looking? 73k HP at 280 speed. That's not bad at all. 360 accuracy. I feel like my champs are a lot slower than they should be for my account level, but it's mostly because I try to have a lot of people built all at once, so it is what it is there. Guys, I hope that these tips were helpful. Oh, one more thing along the lines of the support champions, you're going to want to just look for sets that boost your speed and accuracy. Perception, speed, pinpoint, all those kinds of things. For most builds, you're just going to want to look for those kinds of sets. Regen if you're looking to solo stuff. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know your tips on building champions in the comments below. Let me know if there's any champions you're super excited to build out. I've been Felris, sailing the seas of Raid Shadow Legends, and I'll see you in another video.